What would you do if your own sister stopped her wedding, looked straight at your child, and said she didn't belong there? Not after the ceremony. Not in private. Not quietly off to the side. But in the middle of her vows. With 200 guests watching. And a microphone in her hand. That's exactly what happened to me, Elena Carter, 34, when my identical twin sister, Vanessa Carter, froze the music mid-ceremony and pointed directly at my 10-year-old daughter, Maya. She doesn't belong here. The violinist's bow stopped midair. The pianist missed a note. Someone's champagne glass slipped and shattered on the floor. And suddenly, the entire ballroom turned toward one person. Maya. She was standing there in a lavender dress. The same lavender dress Vanessa had chosen for her. The same dress Vanessa had posted online with the caption, "My beautiful flower girl." So tell me something. If my daughter didn't belong there, why was she part of the wedding party? Why had Vanessa spent months insisting Maya walk down the aisle? Why did she personally take her dress shopping? Why did she rehearse her entrance twice the night before? And why, out of all possible moments, wait until the ceremony had already begun? To humiliate her in front of everyone? Maya looked at me like she'd done something wrong. Like she'd broken a rule no one explained. But here's the part no one in that room expected. I didn't argue. I didn't rush forward. I didn't tell Vanessa to stop. Instead, I calmly stood up, looked directly at my twin sister, on the happiest day of her life, and said one sentence. That's when the guests stopped whispering. That's when the officiant lowered his notes. And that's when Vanessa's brand new husband, Daniel Brooks, 37, took a slow step back from her, like he was seeing her for the first time. Because what Vanessa didn't realize was that this moment, I had been preparing for it for almost 10 years. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. Why would a bride publicly humiliate her own niece? That was the question hanging in the air the moment Daniel stepped back from Vanessa. Because this didn't make sense. Vanessa and I were identical twins. Same face. Same voice. Same birthday. We shared a room for 18 years. Shared clothes. Friends. Secrets. But somewhere along the way, our lives split in two completely different directions. Vanessa became a corporate lawyer by 27. Structured. Calculated. Always in control. I became a single mother at 24. And from the moment Maya was born, something in Vanessa shifted. She never said she hated children. She never said she disapproved of my choices. But she missed birthdays. Skipped holidays. And whenever someone asked how her niece was doing, she'd smile politely and say, "You should ask Elena. She handles that. She handles that." Like Maya was a project. A burden. A mistake that only belonged to me. Still, when Vanessa got engaged to Daniel last year, something changed. She started showing up more. Calling more. Even offering to take Maya out for ice cream. Just the two of them. Then one evening, completely out of nowhere, she said, "I want Maya to be my flower girl. Front and center." Her exact words. And honestly, I hesitated. Because for 10 years, Vanessa had kept a very careful distance. So why now? Why suddenly step into this role of the doting aunt? But Maya was excited. Vanessa took her dress shopping personally. Held her hand inside the boutique. Took selfies with her in the mirror. Posted them online. So let me ask you something. If my daughter didn't belong there, why go through all that effort to put her in the spotlight? Why build that bond for months? Only to shatter it in seconds? That morning, everything seemed perfect. Vanessa hugged Maya backstage before the ceremony. Smoothed down her hair. Adjusted the ribbon on her dress. Then she leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Maya smiled at first. Then her smile faded. At the time, I thought it was nerves. I didn't know that was the first warning. Because less than 30 minutes later, Vanessa would grab a microphone and say the one thing that made the entire room turn toward my child. And Daniel's reaction? It wasn't what she expected. What could a 10-year-old possibly do to ruin a wedding? That was the question running through every guest's mind the moment Vanessa raised her hand and froze the music. The ceremony had been flowing perfectly. Maya had walked down the aisle with confidence, her tiny hands holding the flower basket. Guests were smiling, phones were out, and the air smelled faintly of roses and candle wax. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Vanessa didn't look at Daniel. She didn't even glance at the officiant. Her eyes locked on Maya. And then, in a voice that carried across the room, "She shouldn't be here." The pianist stumbled mid-note. The violinist's bow hovered in midair. The room went silent. Everyone turned. Some whispered. Some froze. And my daughter, Maya, looked at me like she'd done something terribly wrong, like she'd broken a rule no one had ever explained. Vanessa's words were deliberate, calculated. She didn't just say Maya didn't belong, she followed it up with something worse. She's not really family. Now, imagine being 10 years old. 200 people staring. Cameras flashing. And your aunt, your own aunt, declaring you don't belong. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Daniel's brow furrowed. He had grown up with Vanessa, dated her for years, and had always been told how sweet and thoughtful she was with Maya. So why now? Why humiliate a child in front of everyone? Vanessa tightened her grip on the microphone. Her hands shook slightly. She leaned in and whispered something that was audible to the front row, claiming that my daughter's presence had been based on a lie I supposedly told 10 years ago. Whispers spread through the crowd. Daniel frowned, confused. The officiant paused. Everyone sensed that this was more than just a dramatic outburst. There was history here. A secret. A truth Vanessa believed she was finally exposing. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Vanessa had been waiting. Waiting for the perfect stage to throw my daughter under the spotlight. And when she did, she thought no one would see her own shadow. That's when I finally spoke. Calm. Measured. Enough to silence the murmurs, yet sharp enough to cut through the tension. And what I said made Daniel step closer to me, away from her. But the truth of what I was about to reveal, the real story behind Vanessa's outburst, would shock every single person in that room. What kind of lie can survive for a decade? That was the thought racing through my mind as Vanessa pointed at Maya, her voice trembling with certainty, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and triumph. "She's not his daughter," she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. The ballroom went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Every guest knew Maya's father, Ethan Cole, had died when she was a baby. And everyone knew Vanessa had briefly dated Ethan before I ever did. But now, she was twisting that past into some public accusation. She was trying to turn Daniel, her new husband, against me, against my child. Maya froze. Her small hands clutched the basket. She looked at me with wide eyes, a mixture of fear and confusion. Could she even understand what Vanessa was saying? Could she even process that someone in her own family was trying to erase her from the day she had been waiting for? Vanessa's anger was building. She leaned forward, microphone tight in her hand, and added, "She trapped him. Elena trapped him." She painted a picture of a child born from deception. And suddenly, all those whispers around the room turned to murmurs of judgment. I could see guests questioning everything. I could see Daniel's confusion. But here's what Vanessa didn't know. She thought this public spectacle would bury the truth. She thought that by humiliating Maya, she could rewrite history. She didn't know I had been ready. I had waited 10 years for a moment like this. I had proof. Evidence that would silence her accusations in the most undeniable way. I took a deep breath, holding the microphone just long enough to feel the weight of the room's silence. Then I said it, the sentence that Vanessa never expected. The sentence that made Daniel take a step back from her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and realization. I brought proof. Every head in the room turned toward me. Vanessa's confident smirk faltered. Her hands shook. The bravado she had carried for months, years, even began to crumble. And as I reached into my purse, the envelope in my hand held a truth Vanessa could never contest. A truth she had no idea existed. A truth that would expose her obsession, her resentment, and finally confirm what everyone needed to know about Maya's father. Because the moment had come. The moment to reveal what she had been trying to hide, and what she had spent a decade trying to control. The ballroom felt smaller than ever as I reached into my purse. Every guest leaned forward, phones raised, curiosity and tension thick in the air. Vanessa's lips were pressed tight together now. Her confidence had vanished. She didn't know what was coming. I handed the envelope to Daniel. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. Inside was a DNA report. Not one I had faked. Not one that could be questioned. It was dated 9 years earlier, before Maya even celebrated her first birthday. The results? A 99.98% match confirming that Maya was Ethan Cole's daughter. My daughter. His child. His legacy. The room went silent. You could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. Guests exchanged looks. Whispers stopped. Phones lowered. Even Vanessa's mother, who had always seemed amused by her daughter's little games, couldn't hide her shock. Daniel read it once. Then again. His eyes darted to me. Then to Maya. Then back to Vanessa. The realization hit him slowly, like a tide rolling in, that the woman beside him, the bride he had trusted, had been trying to rewrite history in public and, in doing so, exposed herself completely. Vanessa's face went pale. She opened her mouth, probably to speak, but nothing came out. For once, she didn't have the words. The perfect speech, the accusations, the control she had always wielded, all gone in a heartbeat. Maya, for the first time in hours, smiled. Not the tentative, scared smile she had worn during Vanessa's attack, but a small, proud, victorious one. Because finally, the truth had spoken. And the person who had tried to erase her had been exposed instead. I looked around the room and whispered a simple question. If you were in that room, would you have spoken sooner? Would you have let your child face humiliation alone, or would you step up and let the truth shine? Vanessa had tried to humiliate a 10-year-old girl in front of everyone. Instead, she revealed her own obsession, resentment, and inability to let go of the past. And in the end, she became the one everyone remembered, not for her wedding, not for her vows, but for her betrayal. The music never restarted. Daniel walked out before the reception began. And Vanessa? She never looked at me the same way again. Some truths, I realized, are louder when you let them simmer. Sometimes, silence gives power to the moment, and justice, in its own dramatic way, arrives exactly when it should. And that day at my twin sister's wedding, the truth didn't just belong to my daughter. It belonged to all of us.